Hello, Galaxy! I'm Chris Perillo, and I am streaming yet another Star Wars Radar video for you live onto YouTube. Thank you for joining me, whether you are joining me live, and you can do that. You can subscribe to the channel if you want, or you can do what I've done, and that is turn on notifications. I don't know if you heard the notification sound there on my phone, but I just got a notification saying that I was live, which is somewhat helpful. For me, I'm glad I know I'm live. Hopefully you know I'm live as well. Even if you're not watching live, thank you for joining. Of course, thank you for following on Twitter amongst 48,000 fellow Star Wars fans. Today, I thought I'd dive into 3 reasons why I believe it's never been a better time to be a Star Wars fan. Saying up front that there's really no wrong way to be a fan, so long as you're not a jerk to others for the way that they are a fan or what they appreciate most about Star Wars. That's really the only way to not be a Star Wars fan. But, you know, I grew up, like many of you out there, in the 80s, having seen the first Star Wars film on screen within the first 2 weeks of it airing, before it was A New Hope. I was very young. I could barely remember anything from it. And I didn't even really get to be a Star Wars fan as much as you may have, for a lot of different reasons, but it didn't really take off for me until I had an opportunity to get a Star Wars figure for 99 cents. The AT-AT driver, which I still have, sitting over there in my collection. Of course, grew up in a different environment than what we have today. So my perspective is that it's better to be a Star Wars fan now than it used to be, not just because of culture and Star Wars now being a major force, being a part of the Disney franchise, opportunities that, you know, are laid out with licensees and attention, etc. But it's just, I would much rather be in this time and being a Star Wars fan than having to relive being a Star Wars fan when I was substantially younger. The first reason, merchandising. I know some people feel that there's too much Star Wars anything. I don't need Star Wars this, that, and the other thing. All the way down to... Hang on, if you didn't know it, I'm almost out. Star Wars tissues, right? Just in case you need to blow your nose or wipe something, you know, you get the Star Wars, but look at this, I love it! Like, Star Wars highlighters. Okay, I know I'm getting to the product part of these daily videos a little sooner than I was expecting, but I love this. Like, this is something I would have dreamed about, or could only have dreamed about, when I was a kid. I love having more than enough merchandising, to the point where I can't keep up with everything. I can't collect everything, and I'm a completist. I like being a completist. You can't be a completist with Star Wars stuff anymore. You just can't. Unless your name is Steven Sansweet or Gus Lopez. I don't even know if they're completists. But I love it. I love swimming in the Star Wars stuff. I would much rather have more than enough Star Wars merchandise than not enough. And I lived in the period of time where you were lucky to find Star Wars. And I lived through the dark times when there was no new Star Wars stuff. So that's the first reason. I think merchandising overflow is amazing. Love it. Give me more. I'm not going to spend an extra dollar necessarily because it's got Star Wars slapped on it. You know, I want the product. But I love the merchandising overflow. The second reason I think there's never been a better time to be a Star Wars fan is new content ad infinitum. Disney is showing no signs of slowing down. We are about to see the release of The Last Jedi, a new movie. I would be thrilled if every year for the rest of my life, we got a new Star Wars something. A film or television show. We're talking about a live action TV series and maybe, future cartoons. New Star Wars stuff to enjoy. I love it. I go back to the way it was when I was a kid, and we just didn't have enough. I'd rather there be an overabundance of content, which there is in between the movies, the TV shows, the comics, the books. You kind of have to be selective anymore, and I guess I kind of let a lot of that self-select itself in terms of what it is that I revel in that which I don't. But I would rather have more content to look forward to indefinitely than wondering if Star Wars is ever coming back again. I remember the feeling I had after the film Return of the Jedi was released, hoping for something more, and there wasn't anything more. And I know some people, that's when you latched on to EU or Legends, as it's now known. I never really got pulled in as much as you may have. as I've mentioned briefly in the past, I didn't really even get into the Star Wars comics, the Marvel comics, the original run, because we didn't have access to that stuff when I was younger. So I like knowing that there's always going to be something new on the horizon that I can look forward to indefinitely. The third reason why I believe it's never been a better time to be a Star Wars fan, I wrote all these things down. I believe it's never been easier to connect with fellow fans your way. And what do I mean by that? Well, at the beginning, I kind of mentioned there's no wrong way of being a Star Wars fan. I draw a line, though. When you're a jerk to somebody else, for example, you may not like the prequels, and you may take every opportunity to diminish their value, but somebody else may feel differently about them. And when you take that joy intentionally, because it can happen unintentionally, admittedly, but when you take that joy intentionally out of someone's, I guess, fandom, that's not really being respectful. So I happen to be a huge fan of Star Wars figures, right? And I like connecting with fellow collectors. I like, connecting with fans how in the way that I'm seeing a mirror version of myself. We are a fan of the same things in the same way, like Yak Face, right, Jason? I'm a fan of his because we're a fan of the same thing. I mean, I like him in general. I mean, he's probably got the most epic beard in Star Wars fandom, at least as far as fans are concerned. Yeah, I don't know if we're handing out beard awards, but the approach that we take and our feeling for these things are we have similar feelings that are probably never going to dissipate. But to be able to better connect with fellow Star Wars comic fans, it's easy to do. To connect with fellow Star Wars video game fans, it's never been easier to do. You don't have to enjoy everything that the Star Wars fandom has to be a Star Wars fan. You could just be a fan of just a subset of certain somethings within the Star Wars galaxy, of stuff that you can enjoy and revel in with relation to the Star Wars fandom. But you can find a fellow fan that fans over Star Wars the same way that you do. It definitely wasn't that way in my day. Just about everybody that I knew seemed to have a Star Wars figure or a Star Wars toy growing up in the 80s. It's not so much that way anymore, but I think the internet has afforded us an opportunity to enjoy Star Wars and connect with others who enjoy it the same way that, enjoy it the same way that we do. So I think those are just three cogent reasons why it's never been a better time to be a Star Wars fan. I'm sure I could come up with 3 reasons why it's the worst time, but I'm not going to do that because I think I skew towards the side of it's a pretty awesome time to be a Star Wars fan. You are more than welcome to disagree with me, as I'm sure some people will. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you again for following, for turning on notifications, for subscribing. I do appreciate it. I love you. I appreciate you. At this point, however, I'm going to leave you to your own devices. May the Force be with you.